The entire room went dead silent the moment my name was read off that public list during the quarterly all-hands meeting. I sat in my home office with my camera switched off, staring at the screen in utter disbelief as the newly appointed head of human resources announced that my quarterly bonus was being revoked. His name was Trent, the chief executive officer's son, a guy who had been handed a corner office purely because of his bloodline. He claimed I was actively hunting for a new job, calling it a direct violation of company policy, and humiliated me in front of over 200 colleagues without a single shred of proof. For 14 long years, I had poured my heart and soul into building this company from the ground up, writing the very compliance policies they were now twisting against me. I started back when we were operating out of a cramped rental unit with broken office furniture, drafting every single ethics protocol, whistleblower rule, and vendor agreement from scratch. To sit there and watch my flawless professional reputation get torn apart by a young guy who had been on the job for less than a month was infuriating. Yet, I did not shout, and I did not type an angry message in the public chat. I simply grabbed my pen, opened my leather notebook, and meticulously wrote down the exact timestamp of his announcement. By the next morning, the subtle retaliation began in full force, making it clear they wanted to force me out quietly. My administrative access to the vendor tracking dashboard was suddenly revoked without any warning, returning a blank permission error whenever I tried to log in. When I reached out to the tech support desk, they dryly informed me that under the new departmental structure, my role was no longer authorized to view those files. This was the exact same data tracking system I had personally programmed and managed for nearly a decade. Instead of panicking, I opened a fresh, encrypted document on my personal laptop at home and began logging every single breach of protocol. Later that week, Trent called a mandatory structural meeting where he proudly unveiled his vision for modernizing our operations. He openly declared that our department resources were being reallocated, which was just a polished way of saying he was stripping my authority and transferring headcount to his preferred initiatives. Out of the 12 analysts who used to report directly to me, only one temp worker remained on my team by Friday evening. Every time Trent and his inner circle bypassed standard procedure to speed up their changes, they left behind sloppy digital trails, broken policy links, and unregistered edits that I quietly archived. At night, I would sit at my kitchen table, sipping hot tea while carefully reading through Section 4 of our Corporate Compliance Manual. It was a specific clause regarding retaliatory actions and executive bonus eligibility, one that I had personally drafted years prior to protect vulnerable staff from workplace harassment. The rule explicitly stated that taking unverified punitive action against an employee for alleged job searching would immediately trigger a mandatory internal audit and void the entire executive bonus pool for that quarter. Trent was so focused on flexing his new power that he had completely failed to read the manual governing his own position. As the weeks dragged on, the workplace isolation grew much worse, turning my daily routine into a slow test of emotional endurance. My junior staff members were systematically reassigned to other teams, and even my closest mentee, a young woman named Brenda, was instructed not to speak with me anymore. I received a short, heartbroken message from her off the record, apologizing for her sudden distance and explaining that management had threatened her job if she maintained contact. That painful moment transformed my frustration into absolute clarity, giving me all the motivation I needed to ensure these corrupt practices were brought to light. I began gathering digital evidence with surgical precision, saving every altered document, deleted file log, and suspicious expense report I could find. While digging through the public finance channels, I uncovered multiple inflated invoices submitted by Trent for expensive off-site strategy sessions at luxury coffee shops and private lounges. Furthermore, he had approved several high-priced consulting contracts with a questionable firm run by one of his personal friends, completely skipping the mandatory conflict of interest disclosures. Every single one of these actions was a textbook policy violation, and I neatly organized the proof inside a secure digital folder titled Project Accountability. One afternoon, I met with my longtime former colleague and trusted friend Valerie at a quiet local cafe to show her what I had uncovered. She carefully examined the original physical copy of the compliance manual I brought along, her eyes widening as she read through the specific retaliation clauses on page 47. Valerie looked up at me with a mix of awe and shock, confirming that the clause was completely airtight and undeniably legally binding. She reminded me that I had built the company ethical armor to protect others, and now it was time to use that exact same protection to defend myself. By the middle of the following month, Trent had grown increasingly arrogant, regularly bragging in meetings about how he had streamlined our department by removing legacy friction. He genuinely believed that my quiet composure was a sign of complete surrender, completely unaware that every shortcut he took was being systematically catalogued. I continued to attend weekly virtual calls, offering polite nods and brief status updates while letting him dig his own professional grave deeper with every passing day. The beauty of strict corporate policy is that it does not require loud arguments or dramatic confrontations, because it simply records the facts until the right moment arrives. The decisive moment came on the morning of the mandatory quarterly board review, where external auditors and senior executives gathered to evaluate company performance. Before the meeting started, I quietly uploaded a 10-page report directly into the compliance review folder accessible by the lead external auditor. My document detailed every single instance of unverified retaliation, complete with precise timestamps, screenshot evidence, and the exact language of Section 4. I then took my seat near the back of the conference room, maintaining a perfectly calm expression as the executive team flipped through their glossy presentation decks. When the lead auditor reached the internal compliance section, he paused abruptly, staring at his tablet before letting out a surprised chuckle that silenced the entire room. He adjusted his glasses and directly asked the executive board who had authorized punitive bonus adjustments without conducting a formal, documented investigation first. The chief executive officer looked confused, while Trent immediately began stammering out a series of vague excuses about modernizing department workflows and removing outdated legacy barriers. The auditor then read Clause 4 out loud, highlighting the rule stating that retaliatory compensation penalties automatically voided all executive quarterly bonuses. The room froze completely as the full weight of those words hit every senior leader sitting around the grand conference table. The chief executive officer turned toward his son with a look of quiet fury, realizing that Trent's reckless arrogance had just cost the entire executive team their substantial quarterly payouts. When the board chair asked who had originally authored such a strict regulatory policy, I calmly spoke up from the back row and identified myself as the author of record. The auditor confirmed that my documentation was fully verified by system metadata, officially launching a formal internal audit into all recent executive spending and personnel decisions. In the days following the board meeting, the entire executive department was thrown into total chaos as auditors began scrutinizing every single contract Trent had ever signed. His friend consulting agreement was immediately cancelled, his unapproved expense reimbursements were rejected, and his administrative authority over HR was completely stripped away. Meanwhile, my full system access was quietly restored, my team structure was reinstated, and the company issued a formal written retraction regarding my quarterly bonus. Sitting at my desk that evening, I realized that true strength does not come from making the most noise, but from quietly standing your ground and letting the truth expose those who try to tear you down.